Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoterica. On today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at Eco Fighters, released in 1993 for the Capcom CPS 2. This is the second game ever released for the board, the first being Street Fighter 2. So it's definitely one of the earlier games in the entire board's history. Although graphically, it is very impressive. It actually holds up quite well for a game that was just the second time anyone had ever developed on the hardware. Obviously, we're looking at a horizontal shooter. It has a little bit of like an R-type feel to it, where you have the secondary cannon in front that'll block shots and you can rotate it around. And that definitely gives it a little bit of an extra layer of complexity when you have different ways in which you can shoot from your ship. Like a lot of the parallax scrolling in Stage 1, you don't get a ton of it, but it works really well. The cave has a lot of depth there. As far as the setting's concerned, basically it's an eco-friendly game. You are trying to rectify some people that are damaging the environment, and you attack their ships. That's really as much story as you're going to get on a game like this. It also, in like a lot of shooters, I always see inspiration from other series. I get definitely like a Darius theme to this, just because that ship that you fought right there was definitely aquatic themed, so it takes a lot of inspiration from a lot of different series. This game was developed by the same team that made the two Mega Man games for the CPS2, and it definitely has a similar graphical style to it, just some of the color choices and overall vibe of the gameplay. I get a lot of that Mega Man franchise feel in this game as well. There's a little bit of slowdown on gameplay. Maybe they weren't great at coding for the CPS2 just because it was one of the original games. They used Sharp's X68000s to code for the game. That was their development platform of choice, so maybe they just hadn't gotten like super the hang of how to develop for the system, because you do get some slowdown in this game that isn't present in some of the later shooters. So now we have the first boss of Eco Fighters, and it's this large tank, and I do take some deaths to it. Something about this game makes me not very good at it, and I'm really not sure. I can't put my finger on why I'm struggling. I'm pretty good at horizontal shooters and shooters in general. I'm definitely not the best player in the world. I can, 1cc a few games if I practice really hard, but otherwise I play them more for fun and less for just sheer mastery of them. But Eco Fighters, for some reason, just gives me a little trouble. And I think it's just down to the bullet patterns are very random, and sometimes they don't telegraph very well, so I just kind of get beat up a little bit on those. So now we're taking a look right at Stage 2, and we have more of that aquatic theme going on in the game. Obviously, since the background of the story is you're an environmental fighter, it's not at all surprising that you get some of those environmental themes, but like I said, that tie to the Darius series and that aquatic theme, definitely something that this game borrows heavy inspiration from. I'm not exactly sure if we're underwater here, or if the turtles are just floating in the air. There's a little bit of a perspective issue on the game that you get a little splash there, but you don't get the overall vibe that you are under. When you come up on land, you don't really get a splash animation to show that you've kind of crossed that threshold. So graphically, it's definitely impressive. I mean, compared to something like the Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis, if you're playing this in '93, it definitely looked a lot better than other games you were playing. But as far as graphical capability of the CPS2, it's definitely not taking full advantage of the hardware. I do like these little pufferfish enemies that come out, and I think this might be a little bit of why I'm not great at the game. There's not a lot of bullets, but they come out in strange patterns, and the enemies have this like undulating dive pattern movement to them, and that's not something that's super common in the shmup genre, so for me at least, I think that's what kind of gets me a little bit. I haven't spent a ton of time with this game, honestly. I picked it up from my collection because I really wanted to play it, and I have been having fun, but I probably haven't put as much time into this game nearly as something like Pro Gear or Mars Matrix or Gigawing or anything like that. So now we have the next boss here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to let you guys watch a little bit of the gameplay. I'll come back and close out the video, talk a little bit more about Eco Fighters, let you know what we're going to do next week. But otherwise, enjoy this boss, and we'll see you in a second. And we're back and we're fighting this next boss here. I do love how the CPS2 handles sprite rotation. See a lot of it when we talked about in Shadow of Mystara, but those small balls at the bottom of the boss, they rotate in such a satisfying way, and that's something that I definitely love about the CPS2 hardware. Now, if you want to pick this game up, you do have a couple options to do so. The first is that you can just purchase the board, and that's going to run you around like $350 to $400. I found one coming out of Japan right now for $400. Then I found some conversions that were around $300. But if you want an original non-suicided board, you're at like the $400 range. And I really wouldn't recommend it at that price. This has been released on a couple of PlayStation 2 compilations, and you can definitely pick those up for $20 to $30, or you can emulate this game, and you're going to be perfectly fine. If you're a collector and you want to collect a lot of CPS2 stuff, by all means pick it up. Hey, maybe you can get a conversion of the board if you want to, but I wouldn't recommend buying this one unless you were an absolute fan or you want to collect all the CPS2 shooting games or all the games in general. It just doesn't have the long-lasting appeal of a game that I need to want to have it in my personal collection, and I may actually sell this, I think. Who knows? The fun thing about shmups on the CPS2 system, though, is that even though this would be on towards the bottom of my list, it's still a really good game, and the CPS2 is great for that because almost every single game is a fun game that came out for the system. There aren't any dog games where you're just like, this is terrible, why did they make this, why did they release it, I don't want to play it. You'll see me taking more of those deaths here, and that's what I really struggle with on this game, is that the rocks, the patterns, everything is so random, it just doesn't kind of gel with how my brain works. I definitely like those shmups that have more of a pattern-based bullet coming towards you, even a bullet hell game where you can really read and memorize all the patterns. These seem so random that it just doesn't really work with how I like to play a game, and that's why I really do like this game, but I would not rank it very high on my list of games for the CPS2. Graphically, it's good, but it's not great. Gameplay-wise, it's good, but it's not great. So the overall package is just average. Definitely still worth checking out, though. But like I said earlier, I would just recommend you emulate it if you really love it or you get into it. Grab a board if you want to, but otherwise, definitely stick with emulation on this one. But there you have it. That's Eco Fighters for the CPS2. We're going to be back next Tuesday with another entry in our CPS2 series. But if you could do us a huge favor, just go down below and hit that like and subscribe button. Maybe ring the bell. All your support helps. It takes us a lot of time to make each one of these episodes. We genuinely appreciate everything. Short of that, if you want to follow us on Instagram, you can at Chicago Game Collector. Otherwise, we'll have another video out on Friday as well on a different series. And then we'll be back on Tuesday with that mainline series with another completely different game and different genre for the CPS2. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching, and we hope you guys have a great weekend. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.